keep looking for the clock in this room. There's a clock. Okay, well, good morning. It is 9:30, so this new local planning examination hearing session is open. I'm William Fieldhouse, the Inspector of Wandsworth City State, examining the plan. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Good. Well, just on that, I mean, we don't have microphones, so but it worked okay last week, but do speak up so that everyone in the room can hear you. Also, that sitting on this table, has to pick it up. Is it just on Zoom then, or is it on YouTube as well? On Zoom. Okay, well, hopefully all that will work okay. A reminder, please, for everyone to switch mobile phones, laptops, etc. to silent. Toilets in the lobby area, back out through the doors, around to the right, under the stairs to the left. No fire alarms planned for today, so if the alarm does go off, we will need to evacuate the building, following the green emergency exit signs out through that door, round to the left, round out through the main door, then round to the left, the DLR station at that end of the building. You may have noticed that we have a different programme officer this week than last. Claire is around today, so if you've got any questions about the running of the examination, please have a word with her. Today, the main item on the agenda is matter 4, the Stratford and Maryland neighbourhood 8 within the legislative area. And on the agenda, three separate points about that. One is policy N8, that put the three tall building terms in the Maryland area, which was added to the agenda on Friday. It picks up on some of the questions we had last week, and the going back to the sort of rationale for selection. So I'll go through them. And what was when was it explained why each zone was chosen, methodology, and I had a list of criteria that we used to select suitable area. And then there were question marks about the boundaries and the heights and the areas being chosen and what areas potentially not chosen. So anyway, I'm going to look at that again from this particular perspective of each of the zones to go through them. But also, you may have seen the action points that were published on Friday, I think, one of which relates to building codes. So I'm going to also deal with that this morning in general terms. So bear with me. So there's slightly more on the agenda than maybe it was originally, more strictly about policy N8 and each of the site allocation policies. So just that's what I'm going about, and I'll take you through that as we go through the morning. So in terms of the timing, we've got all day if we need it. We may not need to come back this afternoon. We may do. We've got as long as we need today. So what I'm going to do is we'll have a break around about 11 o'clock, 20 minutes, and we'll see how we're getting on around 12:45, 1 o'clock, see how far we are on the agenda and how much longer we think we'll need, and we'll decide whether to have a lunch break and for how long. We're flexible because there's not a separate session program this afternoon, so we can sort of work it out as we go along. So I hope that's okay with everyone. As I'm sure you're all aware, a reminder that the purpose of the examination is to help me decide if the plan that was submitted on the 18th of July 2025 is legally compliant and sound. If not, it could be modified to ensure it is. We'll start each item on the agenda. I'll probably ask some questions to the council. You can hear the answers to those, and then we'll have an opportunity to make contributions. When you do wish to speak, just put your name, plate, and I'll bring in time. I mentioned then legal compliance, just to point out something that we touched on Thursday, probably, was last week by the government in relation to the duty to cooperate, whereby a government signalled its firm intention, I think, to introduce when the regulations for the new planning reform system are brought in January, they say January, early next year, I think, or January. But anyway, the stated intention is that when those regulations come in, they will in effect abolish the duty to cooperate for plans in the current system, including those that are determination. Now, on Tuesday last week, I basically explained that I don't think there's a duty to cooperate issue in this plan. I'm pretty certain that's the case. But I just thought I'd mention that it's likely that the legislation will change and there is a duty won't actually apply when this plan is adopted and when I run my report. Right, another matter I just need to deal with, main modifications. When the council submitted the plan in July, it submitted a schedule of proposed suggested main modifications, that was document SC4. But I said in my guidance notes, IN1, that as they were not part of the plan I'm examining, I'm going to focus on the submitted plan, decide if that is sound or not. And if it isn't sound in some respect, I'd ask the council to propose a main modification. So that's how I've dealt with it. And I said to the council in that note, well, if when I ask a question and you respond and you think that actually the plan isn't sound, the plan that's submitted is not sound, and therefore we wish to propose a main modification, we may wish to draw on those that have been agreed or drawn up in document SC4. So that's how it was left. And in response to my preliminary questions and my questions relating to matters 1 to 4, council proposed modifications drawn from document SC4. And they were published on the 21st of November in document ED6. So that was a 9-page document that I referred to last week. But during the discussions last week, it became apparent that actually there was some additional, there were some more modifications that the council actually were talking about and wished to propose to me. So we, in some of those, to in their written statement, but they hadn't been put in the schedule. Others hadn't been referred to in their written statement, but they were drawing them back on this ST4 document. So we've got in a little bit of a mess. But council has now, over the weekend, prepared a revised schedule of main modifications. So I've got a paper copy, but actually I've just checked and it is now on the website. So if you go, and I'll pretty much see the reference numbers, but it's there. It was published this morning, ED14. So that is the schedule that I think we now need to refer to when we go through each policy. I'm just going to ask the council to comment in a minute, but I've had a quick look at it. I've literally seen it in the last half hour. So some of the main modifications relate to policies as part of the plan, which we haven't really started looking at yet. So they'll be when we come back in January and February. Some of them relate to the policies and allocations that we're dealing with today, tomorrow and Thursday. A few of them, though, may relate to things that we spoke about last week, which you may refer to at the time. So they're ones where I may have a chance to discuss, and others may not have a chance to discuss. Just come back to that in a minute. I just thought finish going through my introduction, and then I'm going to come back to that and we'll just talk about it. Action points. I published a note on Friday with some action points that I identified following my consideration of the issues last week. Hopefully it's clear. It's not necessarily a definitive list of everything that I will conclude on about those issues. Some of them will be coming back to anyway in further matters and issues. But they're ones that I wanted to publish so the council could respond to them as soon as possible. So that response would then be discussed in subsequent hearing sessions. So obviously the council hasn't responded to them yet. We don't know what the council's response will be, but you will know what I've set out. So to some extent they are relevant for discussion today, particularly on the top concerns, but so I'm going to again start to quickly talk about that. And the tall building action points I will deal with when we come on to that element of the agenda before we start looking at the specific TVZs at Maryland. Okay, well, I hope that's all reasonably clear. So hang on if you've got any queries or points you want to make about main mods, action points, or tall buildings, so that I deal with those in a minute. Are there any other procedural queries anybody has before I go around the table and let people introduce themselves? No, okay. So if we just go on to the council and just introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Lily Mahoney, Principal Planner.
She's the Internal Administration. Donna, admin, interim and policy manager. And principal planner at Newham.
Naomi Comfort, principal planner at Newham.
Associate of Rockton, representing admin.
Yeah, just planner at Rockton, planner. Louise Overton, leading full-time manager representing some of the clients and London Square.
Justin Kenworthy, and Director at Stantec, representing the SET.
Andrew Tesserman, Head of Planning at the London Legacy Development Corporation. I think, as we mentioned at the beginning, we have an interest in a number of sites here. Yeah. So I do have colleagues here who are great knowledge of individual sites who may come to the table as and when introduce themselves. That's okay.
Yeah, Rebecca Keaton, planning manager at LDC. I was looking to the space application.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. We can do introductions when okay, that's fine. That's fine. So I will be going through the slides in turn, so it'll be easy enough to just right. Okay, thank you for that. Hello to everyone. So, first thing that I will let people have a chance to comment on if they wish are the action points. Obviously. Hold on the tall buildings one, because I'm going to come back to those. But first of all, is there anything the council wishes to say? I think at the end of Thursday last week, we hadn't seen the action points. You may have an idea of what some of them may be. But you did say that you'd be able to respond by midday on Thursday next week. And I think if that's still the case, that would be helpful. Okay, okay. Is there anything you want to say about any of the action points?
No, just action at the moment, taking it up to senior management, and we'll hopefully look at it.
I mean, some of them are fairly modest in minor, some of them are more significant, and a couple of them are specifically flagged up that I haven't made my mind up yet, so don't read too much into the fact it's providing us a hypothetical if this were the case, what the potential response be. So hopefully you can deal with it on that basis. If you want to say anything more about tall buildings, when we go on to it, you did say that I can fully understand maybe on Rick's position, doesn't say very much, but that's fine. Anything anybody else wishes to say on any of the action points, or indeed main modifications? No. Okay, that's fine. So, the revised schedule of main modifications. I just outlined what I wanted it to be and what was missing on ED6. So, did that? What's been added in ED4, just in general terms?
Just in general terms.
Yeah.
So the original one just had the modification in our response to matters 1 to 4. The revised one had full modifications in matter 1 to 4. That were not part of our response, but they were part of the overall discussion, and they were part of the schedule of modification.
The SD4 schedule. So I suppose the question to you is SD4 was prepared as a response to the Reg 19 reps, which is fine. I mean, procedural guide refers to that, but it also does say, well, unless you've gone around another round of Reg 19, they're not part of the plan, and therefore they don't really have any status. I mean, personally, I find it a little bit odd because it kind of encourages the council to try and respond to the Reg 19 representation, which is fine. As I've tried to explain in my guidance note, it can lead to a situation things being proposed that may improve the plan or that may address a specific, priority of a particular representative, but they may not actually be necessary for families. So I suppose the question to you is, do you think all of these are necessary for families? That's why you've included them. I mean, I'm not going to go through them, or is it you just now included everything that was in SD14, and therefore actually some of them may be improvements, but you wouldn't hand on heart say they're necessarily.
So some of them are improvements because, for example, the hearing, which is a modification, whether it's soundness, it's there to make sure that everyone can see that we did make some modifications in line with the SOCG sound and our regulation writing responses. So most of them are not necessarily but then kind of.
But you've not drawn a distinction. It's my responsibility to decide what's necessary for families. If the plan is sound as it is, there's no modification needed. If it isn't sound, well, it could be modified to make it sound. And you put forward a way that would you would be content with and presume represent all. So that's it. So I think if I'm right, it's a good starting point to have that. So that's fine. I suppose the question is, how many of these in here should have been discussed last week that weren't, or maybe they all weren't? Maybe you actually referred to them. I mean, there's still outstanding action points on a couple of things that these may relate to anyway. So over the chance for people. Right? Are there any some of the ways going forward? We should have talked about that last week. Thinking about the neighbourhoods, well, N17. So there's a few in here, but I think they're probably
I think it's more than just
about the Oda and the transport, public transport,
and then the airport height.
Yeah.
And that's one for clarification. I think a lot of these are clarity points where, for some, to actually kind of confirming what we're going forward with, like with different development partners, if we could do SACG and something like that.
I suppose the other ones, the other neighbourhoods were in neighbourhoods 1 to we did last week 5. There are a few in here that relate to those. Are they?
Otherwise, teams on the background. Sorry.
Yeah. Is there anything in here that you think we didn't?
No.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, we'll move on. So what we'll do then, when we go, we'll get into the detail of N8 and the site allocation. Maybe just quickly the ones that we have through, and then we can refer to them as we go through them today. Yes.
I did have one question about a specific modification. Do you want me to pick it up now, or shall I pick it up as part of the individual site?
When you come to the sites, that's pretty much, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure there isn't anyone here say, well, if we'd known about this last week on a different site, we're probably not in that position. We're probably going to particularly interested in the Stratford Mercury site. So, anyway, if anyone does have any concerns that was here last week, then no doubt get in touch and we can work out a way of addressing that. Okay, so I think that deals with that, which brings me on to tall buildings. I don't want to go back over what we went over last week, but as I explained in the introduction, there are a number of things I do want to deal with. And I suppose one of the ones is actually on reflection that I should have dealt with last week, because it's a general issue about the approach, but I'll do with that. But I think it's just to do with what's called, just to find out, at the very end of EV23, the annex to the characterisation study, pages 32 to 34, there's a little section called Tall Building Strategy, Tall Building Spatial Hierarchy. And this goes back to some of the things you mentioned, but we didn't actually look at those bits of that document. So I wanted just to go through that with you, just to sort of understand, another dimension to the rationale for choosing the areas that were chosen, etc. Yeah? So I'm going to go on to that. But before I do, I just wanted to give people a chance if they wish to say anything about or make sure they're aware of the action points 5 and 6. So is there anything the council wishes to say in response to those?
Yeah, we have looked at zones, and I think we are happy to make some of the changes and change from mass to appropriate height. This can help the soundness and also be a bit more flexible on what can be achieved on the sites. And we are actually on the details about the criteria. We decided another point is needed regarding having to go side and the margin of top buildings. And so we are thinking about what are the criteria for us. Maybe, yeah, there will be a bit overlapping with what we have already used in the assessment, but it might be that it can help to some of the.
Okay, well, thank you. That's very important to know. And so people can bear that in mind. I mean, if it was only to deal with some very specific anomalies that we referred to last week, which was you put a detailed boundary on a map, doesn't necessarily coincide with the application boundary. You know, and then there was another example where something's got planning permission, it's mostly built, but there are a couple of lots that it would be appropriate that it's outside a tall building. So even if it was only to do with some very specific eventualities like that, but it may be, I'll leave it with you, and others will have a view about, you know, you probably say, well, we're not only going to the whole borough, so we're going to have some criteria. I specifically refer to that to deal with how it relates to the applicant and or any other criteria which may be in particular circumstances. But anyway, thank you for clarifying that and responding positively to this page. So, anything else we should say? In response to that, you bear that in mind when we go through policies for the sites. The other one, the other AP6 was just some very specific wording about elements within it. And again, you don't need to, you know, you may also speak about that. You know, I suggest some words just to be clear about what they're thinking. So you can, you know, come up with some few words. I'm conscious of it, it's one of them. It's naturally or issue.
Yes. Yeah. So we had already some modification.
Yes, notice that.
Yeah. So there will be amended, amended probably. But yeah, we take the point of that. Yeah.
Well, we can. I think. Well, we can deal with that. Well, we can, if necessary, if it's relevant to one of the tall building zones we're talking about today. Refer to it, and again tomorrow. Otherwise, we can under the design section when we come back in January, February, or whatever. You know, there's ways we can sort of consider that. Okay, thank you. So, anything anybody wishes to say on those action points relating to tall buildings? No. Okay, thank you. Right, so if I could just go to the tall buildings annex and the last part.
Yes.
You referred to this, you know, obviously the characterizations that were the consistent approach across the program, and you certainly referred to a cascade-led approach and things. When I was reading this again, it struck me that there was maybe something more about a sort of, well, as it says, it calls about a strategy, a spatial hierarchy, which isn't actually referred to either of those things. I think that's deliberate or not. Can I just, I mean, under the strategy bit, it says the various tall building zones allow for the establishment of hierarchy, surrounding context, and set of areas, creating landscape. So you talked about that in relation to individual zones and how the maximum heights and the prevailing related down to surrounding context, etc. But this seems to suggest a wide height. Which is very on last week. So is that deliberate? And should be referred to in the plan?
So yeah, I think I try to explain last week.
Maybe
I think we have used different heights that can within one wide that goes from and I think this map figure 43 is very helpful because I use deliberately this color code to show how the highest is red in step 4, which is the center, and then it starts to step down. And other cluster in West Ham and in town, and lower parameter in things that are opportunity areas, but with lower in town. I think it is mentioned in the plan, and this is the first sentence where we say that tall buildings should be proportionate to their role within the local and wider context.
Where is that, sorry?
Of the policy.
Proportionate to their role within local and wider context. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Can I just go back through the way that the annex sets out the hierarchy? So it starts off with transform areas within opportunity areas, highest P-tower, and or within metropolitan district or local centres. So they were some of the criteria, and they were the sort of key ones in that top division, if you like.
Yes.
Yeah. And that lists, and that's the building heights up to 100.
Yes.
And that's 13, 15, 18, and 19. So that's Stratford and Canning Town, basically, isn't it? That's the red areas you just referred to. Yeah. And then the second one, which I wasn't quite sure the distinction between the second one. So this is other larger areas with opportunity areas. High P-tower, maybe not quite as high. Then close to the metropolitan district centre. So it was actually within the centres and the highest.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
But then when you list the zones, they're the same, except TV Z20 doesn't appear in the list. Sorry, TVZ19 doesn't appear, and TVZ20 does.
19.
19 is in the top division,
Yes.
and not in the second division, whereas 13, 15, and 18 are both.
Yeah, the 18 Stratford High Street basically is outside the Stratford Town Centre, and is where we start to step down. Basically.
Okay. But that's listed in the top division, isn't it? Z18.
I think there must be like.
So they're not meant to be in more than one.
No.
Okay, well, I'm not sure. Okay, so there isn't. Okay, so you've got the top division, and you've got the Premier League, you've got the Championship. Best league to do, Sheffield United. Then you've got the larger master plan areas with the Royal Docks and Vector Riverside Opportunity Area, and that's about looking to the future.
Yes.
That's the improved transformation, etc. So yeah. And then you've got ones with lower, affected by airport constraints.
Yes.
Or a close proximity to low context.
Yes.
That's
More sensitive.
Yeah, more sensitive. Yeah, and they're listed there, and they relate to the ones we spoke about last week. And then we've got this one about tall building elements in locations to mark areas with local or town centre designations. But they have to have high access.
Yeah. So these are basically an example of the districts.
Which we'll come on to, I think.
Yeah, so there are like a few of those tall building zones which are not very big, but we have identified a few parts that were available for potential transformable in the future, and they are in very high P-tower and very in town center location station. So we have identified a few. More like specific
which we can talk about.
Yeah.
When it talks about a key location to mark areas, so it's talking about visual
station with a London plan, specific location.
So it's not just about taking the opportunity to provide, a development in an appropriate place. It's actually part of the spatial strategy for buildings to create a landmark, visual landmark. Understood. So we'll come back to that on those. The Green Street one I'll talk about in the national for that. And then finally, we've got one about development areas in SIL, strategic industrial locations for industrial intensification, and that has a lower height, up to 50 metres.
Yes.
For what reason?
Because they are, again, very strained areas. They are all low pital. All the seals are around. It's an opportunity area, but it's a low pital. And we have checked the table from GLA, how many stories you can achieve to grow an industrial intensification. Is in the building paper. So we have checked and see if something is possible to be done either outside of the building. But yeah, we allowed for 50 there, and I think there's a range. 32. Yeah, there is a range.
Okay, so there would be areas that possibly wouldn't, if it wasn't for a still, they may not have been designated as a tall building zone.
I mean, there are also the context there is in line with those art that we have identified.
Okay, so right, understood. So I suppose the question is that strategy that isn't just about the immediate townscape sort of approach to the zone and the heights within it, would it help? Is it essential for the plan to get a set that out?
I think so, because we have seen in the past developments approved, and they are not necessarily in the location that we think are best suitable for buildings and fitting with the context.
Because they're picked off on a design led, one by one. So setting that context of a strategic approach.
Yeah, and because as we say, we want this coordinated approach and design the London plan where we are not assessing on side by side basis. We want to have like an image, a view of how we want the borough to grow. So we have defined this spatial hierarchy in the borough, and it's also in line with the context. With the picture, it's not. We have it is evidenced by the analysis that has been done with the study. Next.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I will. An action point about that, and it may be that you can kind of pull it together with the action point around 5. I don't know, maybe not. Anyway, I think that's probably helpful. Okay. I'll bring others in a minute if they wish to, which also then brings me on to specific to NA Stratford and Maryland and the implementation box D4.2. Again, this mentioned in relation to Canning Town, I think, saturation. So, back in the plan, in the implementation box, D4.2, the 4th paragraph. Which talks about in NAT an uncoordinated collection of tall buildings once the legibility of the cluster is coherent. So that's something that's happened based on previous policies. I won't look at the so that's the council's view, that there's an uncoordinated collection of tall buildings there. So this approach that we've now adopted with these sort of maximum heights and prevailing heights, it's intended to try and prevent that happening again in the future elsewhere, and how to tackle it in Stratford and Maryland. It goes on to say development should establish a spatial hierarchy, the role of different clusters around the station, Westfield Avenue, the urban edge of Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, International Art Quarter, and the Stratford waterfront.
Yes.
So that spatial hierarchy would be achieved partly by the prevailing heights and the maximum heights that you set. That takes a moment there and then better coordinating it in the future. Okay. But when it's development should establish, it's the, as long as it fits with the policies, it should achieve that. There's nothing extra a development has to do to show that it's improving this uncoordinated collection.
It means that it should follow the policy, the appropriate policy to ensure that this we can deliver this vision. And these specific areas that are listed are the ones that we have in the two buildings. 19 are the tallest elements. So overall it's 60 meters, and we have clusters of 100 meters. Yeah.
And those zones reflect where that fits in with what's there now. But it's a neutral building. So sorry, the third bullet point in that paragraph 4. Neutral building should therefore be below established heights and address micro-developments. So why is it therefore it should be below established heights?
Yeah, I think this was what we agreed that we wanted to go with honestly. What was built was already the maximum they could be. So we went below that height. So I think the tallest element is struck with 145 meters, and we went to 100.
Okay. So that goes back to some of the discussion we had last week about, well, why can't we have planning commissions and there's already building stuff. It's back to that kind of strategy. Okay, understood. Right. Okay. Anything anybody wishes to say about any of that, what you've heard? You've heard the council saying it's going to propose modifications to provide more flexibility about these zones and heights and development outside them. You've heard what they've said about the approach to Stratford area in particular. We'll come on to individual sites shortly, but anything anybody wishes to say? No? Okay, thank you. So just before we do move into the separate English Historic England, so we're going to hear a lot. They do have an outstanding concern, I think, about this particular neighbourhood and the approach, about the impact of assets. There's various, always the case with heritage assets, we've got legislation, national policy, we've got thematic policies in part 1 of the plan. You've also got some specific policies in policy P4, table 1, and in further guidance. Can I just quickly go through those? So the first one is tall elements in the 32-metre area and or in close proximity to the conservation areas should be limited in number. So that's within the zone, but if it's close in or close to the conservation area, it should be limited in number. How would that be dealt with at a development stage?
So
in the table 1.
Table 1, which
well, I think we pick the same criteria. We pick 18.
18. Okay.
The third one. So all elements in the conservation area should be limited in number.
Yeah, 32-meter zone in the specific tall building zone. It's related to the conservation area. So that's why we say, yeah, we can have a 32-meter zone, but we should be very mindful of the character, the context, and the sensitivity of the conservation.
But it seems to be saying the number of tall buildings should be limited in number.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure how that will work.
Because we have prevailing heights, so the way I described it last week. So we have prevailing heights, and then from this prevailing height, we can have taller elements. So what we are saying is that we don't have just tall buildings, but have a mix of shoulder buildings and taller elements.
Right, okay. And then there's a second, the next bullet point is tall buildings in immediate proximity to the conservation area and other designated heritage assets should address and respond to the scale of the design approach.
Yes, and this is some of this wording of the package with Historic England as well, because one of the concerns was how we transition from the conserve area to transform area, and we agreed to those wording which are more related to design and how this part of shoulder buildings can actually be more related to the context, and then from there you can have a taller element. Okay.
And then the next one also to do with that you conserve the character without harming the significance, attracting important landmarks and key views. Again, it's another perspective on it. So I suppose your view is that with the various policies in the plan, and those specific ones relating to these zones, you think that's enough to avoid harm to the heritage assets?
Yes, we think that we have enough guidance in the tall building zone, and it's also reflected in the principle of the site application to protect the heritage asset. However, we have agreed with working in the statement of common ground as 6 to update the structural conservation area appraisal management plan after the adoption of the plan. We have capacity, and we have already started some conversation with them. So we have an agreement.
And subject to that, they're content with the plan as it is submitted, or is there outstanding?
I think overall they were happy. I think their concern was mainly about site allocation assessment.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, yes.
Yeah. And but I think we have done, we have followed the steps, and I have evidence that in the building annex. So it will be a bit different.
They have their own guidance, don't they? And one of them is about this happens about the extent of the evidence there is in terms of the heritage impact assessment at the application stage rather than moving to application. So there isn't a specific one, but you said that assessment through the characterisation studies.
Yeah, we have done a characterisation study. We have the tall building annex which has also a section about landscape assessment for each of the area in terms of like character and typologies. And then when we have done the site allocation 60, we have one of the criteria was also the proximity to the conservation area and heritage assets. So all these elements have been considered when selecting the sites and assigning the height.
Well, they're not here, so I can't ask them. So, but I suppose the question in my mind is, well, even if you did something more detailed at a site allocation assessment, perhaps whatever, would it make how would it change the plan? I don't. The level of prescription in the plan is quite high as it is, and there's a lot of general policies, so I'm not sure what really take really. Okay, thank you. Right. Anybody else wishes to say? No? Okay. I'm waiting patiently for your specific sites. Right. So I'm going to just I mean, I think it's very obvious in these. These are all in the Premier League. Apart from 18 and 19, certainly in the Premier League. Stratford Street, 18 seems to have dropped into the Championship for a bit as well. TGZ 20s in the Championship. So I think it's fairly self-evident in this case that the criteria that these meet today, it's the ones that meet all the criteria. The highest public transport accessibility. So I don't think I really need to go through those. Thank you. On some of these, we go through the other paperwork, it may be clarification. But I think having gone through that list and seeing where they're categorised, it's easy to understand which of the criteria they meet. So yeah, asset limited.
Yeah, thank you, Justin Campbell, the Stantec. It's just regarding the general approach.
Yeah, please.
Obviously, it's linked to one site, which is the bus bingo.
Yeah, we'll come on to yeah.
Of course, that site is adjacent to the Stratford High Street DLR station. It has a detail rating of 6B, which is the highest you can secure. And around that area, there's obviously a reduction in scale. Well, to the north and the zone to the north, but our zone drops down in scale. It's just a commentary about the lost opportunity that I made when we heard last time about this as a DLR station, high levels of accessibility, and therefore wouldn't it be more appropriate to have a higher density in this location, particularly on our client site.
So just to be absolutely clear, so your client site, I've got a map that you provided. which shows the little sort of triangular shaped site and an aerial photograph.
Yes.
Yeah, and it shows it in relation to these heads, I think. It's sort of partially within one.
It's, sorry,
It's from your written statement.
my written statement. This map we've got two.
It's one that's got a little box at the site and it points to
Okay.
to it. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got that one, and I've also got this aerial photo.
Yeah, the zones were actually the site is in 3 zones.
It's outside the allocation, isn't it? Or is it?
The actual tall building zones overlay our site allocation, so we're into a different zone.
So your allocation is NA SA4.
That's correct.
That's the little site shown there.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I think what was missing from that plan, it hadn't got the allocation shown on it.
Oh,
But
okay.
you've got it. Yeah, okay, I understand now, sorry. Okay, so you've got a site allocation.
It's got a black dotted line.
Yeah, I've got it, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so we're in 3 zones. We're in the middle of our site is the 50 metre zone.
Yeah.
Southern portion of our site is 32 metre zone, and the northern portion, which is closer to all of the tall buildings, is a 40 metre zone. So it just seems, one, are the heights tall enough in the first place? And I understand the point about cascading down to the character of the area to the south, which is 12 stories and lower. But my concern is more about, I suppose, should the heights be taller in the first place, so should we be in a taller building zone? And in particular, the northern portion of the site, which is next to the high street, where we have the tallest buildings in the area located. So really, it's more about the general approach. Wouldn't it be more appropriate at this location to try and optimise the density development on this site? And in this location is a cluster of tall buildings, albeit we are in the context of the conservation area.
Okay, so yeah, do you want to respond?
So the site is in the tall building zone 18, starting on High Street, which overall has a 50 meters parameter, but the site itself is actually 32 and 40 to the back. Shouldn't be there, the 50 meters in the middle.
Well, it's back to these lines. It's a bit difficult with these apparently specific lines.
So it's 30 meters to the back and 40 meters along High Street. So this is the area where we consider that we can start to step back because it's outside the town center and is in proximity to the conservation area, and it is also taking into account the character of the High Street, which is not just the character of the western part, which has these scattered tall buildings, but on the eastern side of the High Street is completely different characters, really medium rise buildings. So we are aligning maybe the height for specific location. This is super,
Okay, well, we can come back. We're going to go to the site allocation shortly, but do you want to just?
It's just, I suppose just picking up on one of the online version of the proposals map shows half the site is 50. So if the proposal map is wrong or your interpretation.
No.
I've got the policy map here, and I think the top bit of the site just cuts into the blue.
I think.
So I've got you on.
Yeah.
If you click in the middle there, where the second one is this maximum building height 50 meters across the middle of the site, and then it's 32 in this location and 40 just to the north next to the high street. So
No, it's not my interpretation. I did not. So I know what I meant is just that the way you draw the line. There is a little gap that should. So we can review this clarity.
Yeah. It does go back to this. I mean, the way I see it, the action point deals with the issue about the precision or otherwise of the lines how they relate to policy.
Yeah.
So there's the way that I suppose the action point deals with it is, well, make the policy more flexible, but maybe leave the line. But if you want to somehow, I don't know, change the lines or blur the lines, I don't know, think about that too.
Yeah.
I think that's, it's that issue, isn't it?
Yeah. Not
So-
and take it away and
Okay. Okay, well, we'll come back to the allocation.
Yeah, so yeah.
But I understand. I mean, I can see. I mean, the council is explained why. The approach is there in terms of the outside the town centre, conservation areas, and approach to high streets. So it's all part of that approach. But I get the point about, well, we need to maximise, optimise opportunities to get them done. Okay, thank you. Right, so thank you for that. That was helpful. Is there anything about policy N8? For anybody who wishes to say, I don't think. Are there any modifications to N8 in the schedule?
We have over on page 20. There's a few clarification points in there around adding sale to part 10. Again, clarification about greater carpenters delivering healthcare.
Yeah, so two ones there. So the first one, you referred to local industrial locations, Lille, yeah?
Yeah.
But it didn't refer to SIL.
Yeah.
So it was sort of factually incorrect in the sense that it's got both, but you only referred to one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got main modifications that are essential to soundness. You've got minor additional modifications, factual corrections. That's in the discretion of the council. I wouldn't get involved in those. So you can make those changes. I mean, you'd have to make a judgment if that's a factual correction. It could be an additional mod that you just make. So the risk of anyone challenging by doing that seems pretty big. And then you've got things that could fall in between the two, unfortunately. And it's more than an additional mod, but it's not the main mod. It's not essential, but it would improve the plan. Some things unfortunately fall within that gap.
It's made me slightly feel like changes with that policy obviously does change slightly.
Yeah, it is policy wording. So yeah, it's okay. Well, I'll fine. I mean, I can understand the reason for it. The other one about with reference to NHSA3.
Yeah.
That's again factual because it's saying the new healthcare facilities list some allocation, 2 allocations, but actually there were 3.
Yes.
Again, it's a similar thing. So yeah, factual accuracy. Okay, understood. Right, anything anybody wishes to say on N8 policy before we move on to the allocations? Yeah, that's it.
Just with the Stantec set. Just regarding the vision.
Oh, right, vision. Not policy, that.
Yeah.
Try and avoid bits that aren't policy. It's not big enough as it is. But go on.
And it therefore has a direct result on client's side. Obviously, the vision itself is a number of 16 criteria that appropriate in terms of land uses within the Stratford and Devon. I think the area itself is obviously town centre, or has a town centre. It also is within the legacy opportunity area, parts of the opportunity area. Particularly my client site is within that opportunity area. And our client site is just outside the town centres. But the vision itself directs hotels or visitor accommodation to the town centres only. We've drawn reference in our statement to the fact that the plan policy, Part G, 10, explains that visitor or service accommodation should be located in town centres and with opportunity areas. And in fact, the policy goes to say it's promoted in town centres and opportunity areas, particularly where they are well connected to public transport, particularly in central London. In this particular case, our client site is next to a DLR station, and it is within an opportunity area, but the vision itself would not allow for a hotel on this site. And we have pre-act with the council, and they have made it clear hotel is not appropriate on this site. So, of course, we talked to the GLA about it, and the GLA have confirmed that in an opportunity area, visitor accommodation is an appropriate use, and they would support that use, and there would be no strategic issue with the use of visitor accommodation on this site. So, notwithstanding the site allocation itself, which we'll come on to later, the vision does not give opportunity for visitor accommodation unless it's in town centre. But the strategic policy, the London Plan policy, allows it for town centres and opportunity areas. So what we're suggesting is we add in an additional bullet point number 17, that says supporting hotel development or visitor accommodation, whatever required, within centres, Stratford and Maryland neighbourhood, as a key tourist destination, which it is, and parts of the opportunity areas where they are well connected with transport.
Yes, and I think you even found a recording of me doing it.
Yes.
So that was very exciting. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, understood. Yeah. So, well, there's two questions, aren't there? One, the interpretation of the London Plan, and whether there's anything in this plan. I mean, at the moment, this plan, sorry, is there something in here that actually you think is inconsistent with the refers to the N8?
That's the issue. Yeah. I think it's bullet point, I think it's 12 that refers specifically to directing visitor accommodation to town centre, Stratford. Yeah, Stratford town centre. But yeah.
So which number in the purple box?
Sorry, I haven't got it to hand.
Yes, understood.
Includes reference in parts 4B,
4B.
delivering visitor accommodation uses to Stratford town centre, but does not acknowledge there are other locations like opportunities. Yeah.
So what you call the vision is actually the policy, isn't it? Yeah. Back to my point. Yes. The clarity. So the vision box is the white box, the purple box is the NA policy box, and it's policy 4B. Okay, so the point being, London Plan allows in an opportunity area if it's got the high retail or good public transport. Do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think the site allocation, obviously our approach to the site allocations have been around priority land uses, and that's the need to deliver general needs housing. Really. With regards to hotels, that's covered within policy in HS 8.1, and that will be picked up in the later matters.
Yeah.
But ultimately, sorry, I'm just reading the
4B starts off by saying enhancing Stratford town centre.
Yeah.
And it talks about visitor accommodation uses. So I think.
Yeah, so it is consistent with the NPPF and the London Plan by directing that visitor accommodation to the network of the town centre and local centres. Obviously, your point around the opportunity area, I think ultimately the location of your site and the kind of needs that we have there, it's just outside of the town centre, and that's kind of the strategy that we have in place.
Yeah.
And the need that we have in all our allocations are residential led. And that's obviously highlighted within that Route 3. But I think ultimately the town centre first principle is what we'd be looking at, and the principle of the support of this use is covered in the policy. But yeah, it will be picked up in the HS 8.1.
Which is the same inconsistency in HS 8 for visitor accommodation. So yeah, so it's not in that and it's not in this, then there's no direction to accommodation to opportunity areas, which is so notwithstanding our site should this policy include opportunity areas, then there's a reference point.
I mean, yeah, could I bring in Antonia?
Yeah, sorry, apologies.
Well, I mean, we're going to deal with HSN when we come to it. I'm just looking at this policy and I'm wondering whether there's anything inconsistent. I mean, it's talking about enhancing the town centre. It's not actually directing its accommodation to the town centre as such, is it? HS8, I mean, the London Plan Authority still applies.
Yeah.
It's only because it's a contradiction, I suppose. This would be more recent. So we're going to come to HSA. We're going to come to the site application policy. And I don't know. Is there anything you need to say briefly now that is?
I think you summarised well. We'll come around to the overall strategic approach to hotels.
Yeah.
It's just my reference to the vision for Stratford and Marion that will be achieved by 16 bullet points. So it's not just Stratford and Maryland as well. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's on the right page, maybe. I've got pages 490 to 492, Stratford and Maryland area.
Yeah, I've got the policy.
Yeah, and then at the end, at the start of the 16 bullet points.
Yeah, you suggesting adding 17.
Yeah, I'd like to add 17.
Yes,
but it says at the top, it's the vision area of Stratford and Maryland.
Yeah.
So it's not just Stratford Centre, it's also
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think, it's just supporting that role of the mix, and I think the town centre first principle is what we move forward to put in to ensure that sustainability.
I mean, we'll deal with this. I mean, obviously, London Plan deals with all of London. I think it may be legitimate for a borough to sort of stand it out. Yeah, we've got capacity within our town centres to accommodate all the hotels. I don't know. We'll come on to that. Whereas elsewhere, it may be, well, actually, we don't have capacity in our town centres, and therefore we're going to locate hotels in the opportunity areas where people are somewhere, whatever. So, I can see not necessarily London Plan prescribing that every borough has to allow hotels outside town centres.
But the examination which the inspector ran, it was made clear from a London Plan perspective that opportunity areas and town centres have equal footing. It's not. So,
okay. Right, I think we've explored that as far as we can. We look at the allocation process, we'll also look at it again anyway. So, the reason why you may want to really have a town centre focus at that point. Right, thank you. So I'm going to do my thing about going through each of the allocations now. Some of which people have got things to say about, some of them you haven't, but I want to go through the pro forma and the viability just as so I can tick these things off. So N8SA1, Stratford Central. So this is a large area, 12 hectares. It's in it that development takes place was on. So this is shown on the pro forma as not starting until after deliverability. But the capacity is a single figure that's laid. Yeah. And actually, the total capacity of 456 wouldn't be delivered in the planned period to 2042. It's actually extending beyond that, I think.
Sorry. So yes.
Total completion to the planned period 848. Okay.
Yes, I think so. Yes, so we see the absorption rate.
Let's start slowly. If we're crawling along for a number of years.
So there's one clock within it called the Rex that is intended to be delivered a bit sooner, and then the remainder of it is faced with the market.
And that's the market absorption rate in Stratford as a whole. Stratford Maryland is 10,000 or something, isn't it? Or something.
So it's around about 100.
Yeah, 10,600 or so. The original figure you gave me in the so. Okay. In terms of the viability, what did the table tell us when PLV?
Yeah, so one, and that would be viable at 20%.
And the row
And
was
the row is 89.
89. So, and thank you for looking back across the table and the percentage figures. It's helpful. So to get to the green column, the first one you get to is 20%. Yeah. Anybody want to say anything about that one? No. Brings us on to N8SA2, Stratford Station. This is the train and the bus station surrounding the building. This is capacity. Got two figures here. It contributes to 5 years through a purpose-built student accommodation.
Yes, that's
which
correct.
Has got full permission.
Yes, it does, I believe. Yes,
22.
it does. It's got full permission, which is under construction.
So that's one way you can assume that unless there's clear evidence to contrary.
Yeah.
So that's part of it, and then the rest doesn't come forward until
Till the long term. So
Long
it's
term.
one of those sites where we have high and low range options for it.
Yeah.
So the capacity that's in the long term is based on housing being able to the Stratford station upgrades.
Yeah.
So there's a high capacity where you include it, and it's included in the long term to account for the time it takes for the infrastructure to deliver. And then there's another capacity option which doesn't include that additional 600, whatever it is,
Yeah.
however much it is.
Yeah.
For the Stratford station.
and the viability on that one.
Number of sites.
Right, okay.
So they're mainly BLB1.
Yeah.
And we've got 96, which is row 96, which is viable at 25%. We've got 99, that is not viable. We've got 102, which is viable at 30%.
Yeah.
We've got 105, which is viable at 35%. And we've got, just double checking, row 111, so 111,
Yeah.
viable at 15%.
5.
15, 15.
Yeah.
And row 108, which is not viable.
Okay, so 6 different plots there. Yeah. But is any of those the one that's actually under construction now, just out of interest? The student one, that's the student one.
I'm not quite sure which plots
Okay, doesn't matter.
each of those positions relate to.
Okay, no, that's fine. Unite, no, they did have a representation about this, but I think we can deal with it under the PDSA policy when we're dealing with that. Okay, thank you. So, deal with SA1 and SA2. This brings us on to SA3. Carpenter's District. Total capacity 145 based on planning permission. Now this assumes contribution to 5-year supply of 720. Right, so first thing is, it seems to have an outline permission. Well, it doesn't have an outline permission, it's an outline resolution to grant.
It is, yes.
So, clear evidence for why it's contributing to 5-year supply, yeah?
Yeah.
It seems to be multiple ownerships. Is that something that needs to be
So it's a council-led regeneration scheme.
It's what, sorry?
It's a council regeneration scheme. So the permission numbers are based on the councillors coming for currently in resolution to grant. And their expectation is that it will deliver over 12 years, hence we've calibrated it, although, as you point out, the units are still in resolution to grant.
Yeah, okay, so it's not dependent on all around landowners, that?
Yes, that's all of that capacity is part of the council's project scheme.
Okay. Delivery of the site is dependent upon the provision of critical infrastructure, including a new entrance to the station, a new or improved road bridge for cycling. So what you say, dependent on that, so does that have to come in place before we can start?
I think they're the co-design elements that are being worked out. I think they can come forward later phases. I'll have to double check that though. The bridge, I think, is forward a bit later.
So this resolution grant is waiting for us. So there's the entrance to the station, new entrance to the station, and there's the bridge.
The entrance to the station is completed, but the bridge I want to check.
Okay, so I've got 720 here, which there were two weren't identified last week, which I think the council accepted needed to drop out of the 5-year supply. Based on what you've said, I think we can probably leave this one in, given that it's the council-led bit and it seems to be moving okay. Right. Let's move on again to the Stratford High Street site, which we talked about in terms of the tall building zone and approach. Just on the capacity study, it just has a contribution of 153 in the 5-year supply. And viability shown to be
viable at 45%.
What BLB is it? Sorry.
BLB1.
Yeah.
We're 92.
Thank you. And it's what percentage is it?
Viable at 45%.
45%. Okay. Okay, so anything you want to talk about? We've got obviously the development proposed, the building heights, etc. etc. I think we've done with the 12 buildings, but the development mix. Yeah, start with that.
Let's start with land uses.
Yeah.
Obviously we've etc. And on the back of the plan, policy 10, we clearly believe that for accommodation can be accommodation on the site in accordance with strategic policy. We can't see why the council have stopped that by restricting it through the site allocation. Effectively, it says residential and employment generating uses, but we've talked about the proposals. They have said no to residential based scheme on the site because of the drop allocation. And that's clearly their direction of travel. We're sceptical about the deliverability of residential on the site. We have submitted a viability assessment that demonstrates that a 100% private scheme, optimised scheme on the site is not viable, even without support financing. And what we have indicated is that a mixed-use scheme on the site, which includes hotel, as well as co-living, as well as apartments, as a general mix, and Block D is as 100% social rent, which will be two would deliver a viable scheme. So what we're saying to the council in our representations of view is on this particular site, that, and bearing in mind the strategic context, opportunity area, location next to a DLR station, but more of a mixed-use approach would be more appropriate to make the scheme viable. And that mixed use should comprise a hotel with its description. So we've indicated in our representations that we would like to have the words hotel and residential with employment floor space.
Yeah. Okay, understood. So really, I suppose my question is, what is the plan not sound as it is? Whether alternative would be very good. I suppose what you're saying is it's not sound because it's not viable. It needs to work to form a development that is viable. You can say that mixed use with a hotel. Yeah. Okay. Any other? We've dealt with the DNA policy bit about hotels under the policy, and we talked about the tall building zones and the heights. Anything further you want to say?
Well, on the tall building heights, we've obviously indicated in our representations that we believe that the current restriction of 9 to 21 metres, which is 3 to 7 stories, with a tall of 40 metres, which is 30 stories, is not, I suppose, for the site, it should be taller than the accessibility level. It's in the area, it's next to the town centre. And of course, to 50 metres. But of course, the site application says that 40 metres, 14 stories. We're saying, well, actually, it should be higher than that, 60 metres to 20 stories.
Understood. Okay. So I suppose in terms of the clarity about which zone falls within that height, I suppose the site allocation is specific. I mean, on the map, in the D4 map, you probably wouldn't be able to tell. It's something you look at the policies map and where the lines are there, it becomes.
Yeah.
Okay, anything you want to say?
No, I think ultimately our approach has been consistent. We have quite a proactive approach to hotel delivery within the plan, and obviously we can pick it up in the specific policy later on. But yeah, they have been to use, and we believe it is in line with the NPPF and the plan. And in terms of liability, in our evidence is at 45%. So I think with the understanding what the kind of variables you included and how that has come to be.
Yes, a relatively viable site, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, again, the development management stage, if the scheme comes in, it includes a hotel. Presumably, there's two arguments. One is viability. Presumably, it's more affordable housing than saying it otherwise. Well, that's a factor. Secondly, consistency with the plans of purpose of main town centre uses vis-a-vis the London plan strategic approach, opportunity areas and retail, etc. So, but I say the question is whether an alternative policy would be good. Whether this policy is not sound. So that's where I'm starting from. Okay.
So the viability is
of course. Yeah.
This one.
Well, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't.
But I mean, right. So thank you. I think I've understood that. So we'll move on to let's deal with the next two. No, no, break. So, sorry, but we'll just have a short break. So I'll just pick off these SA5 and SA6. I don't think. You will speak. Now, let me just deal with SA5. We'll have a break before we come on to the ones where you've got to say on the side. So SA5 is Stratford Town Centre, large area, including stations, shopping centre, dwelling on the buildings, capacity for capacity study 2327, but planning permission 508. Yeah. The contribution to 5 years supply is significant 2294. Yeah. So this has been various different plots within this large 34 hectare area. So I'm going to go through these. So this significant contribution to the 5 years supply based on these various permissions. Keep listed in the pro forma. Yeah. Okay. So what have we got? We've got 700 units down the list on your planning permission box. Yeah. So we've got 700, which is planning permission's got VAR. That means a variation.
Yes.
Is this a full or is this an outline?
Is I believe it's part of a wider outline, but I think all of the units have detailed permission as part of that reserve master application.
Okay, so you're saying that that 700 is one that it should be assumed to be deliverable unless it's released to the contrary, and that's okay. And this is that for, that's for one block, is it?
I think it's for a couple of blocks. It looks like, apologies, this is probably the most complicated site that we've got in terms of the trajectory. But yeah, it looks like it's split up into a couple of phases. So we've got about 326 in 27, 28, and 374 in 29, 30. So I'll step back.
And then the next 5 commissions are all full, so they've all got full permission. The application reference number.
Yes, by the.
And one that says completion, I think it's actually been completed.
Is one completion, and that's on the Stratford International Bus site.
So that wouldn't count to the 5 years flags. That's already that would have happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the other ones that add up to this 2294. Yeah. They're all full permission.
They're all full permissions, but there's looking at this. There's a couple of plots within the wide allocation that have resolution to grant rather than so that's about the 106 to agree that the water north, which is for 672 units that we have for 5 years. And then also we have a couple of student housing schemes, which between 2 of the sites are 572 homes, and again those are resolution to grant and 5 years.
Okay, so these ones that have got resolution to grant,
yeah.
So they're waiting section 106.
They are, yeah. I mean, what we tend to do with resolutions to grant is when we phase in line with our methodology that we have broadly, we'll normally assume an extra half a year on top of what we phase it. And where that half a year has elapsed, we'll usually phase as per how we phase other sites at that scale. So it's kind of assumed that once the resolution's gone, it's agreed it should be within the immediate term.
Yeah. So obviously this is the case when we're phasing forward to 2027.
Yeah.
So I mean, well, it's not full commission in effect. It's just going to sort out one section 106.
Yeah.
And you've got more than 3 months to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
A year and a half to do that. And it's the land ownership, it says varied, public and private. Are these councils like?
I think, to be honest, with most of these, they would be LT might have help more out of these, but I think most of them are private sites.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Sorry, so before we move on to SA6, our representation actually taking the reference to SA6, so the value of sites where the within SA5.
Okay.
It's outside of the sort of the tax and track of that application. It's part of the Stratford outline permission, but it also West application.
Okay. Okay.
The 700 homes. is the value commission.
Sorry, let me just look at the list again. Just speak up a little bit.
Sorry, so value more Jamie partner for the LLC to deliver those 700.
That's the one with the variation of the commission. Yeah, yeah.
So they've got reserve matters approval, so that is now 12%. 700 homes to be completed by 2031.
So you're reinforcing what the council says. You're confident that will take place and will contribute to 5 years' time. Thank you very much for that. That's helpful. So this traffic from south, let's just pick it up then. So thank you for confirmation of the element of it anyway. So SA6, this is a 5-year supply, and it's a purpose-built student accommodation block.
Yes.
This is under construction.
Well, this part of it isn't. It's sort of the broader permission is under
Right, okay.
construction. It's an outline scheme, and we have made it as per what was in the legacy development corporation trajectory for the site. So when they transferred power back to us, they provided a trajectory which had about 2022, and so we based it in accordance with what they had in their trajectory.
So outline.
It has one outline, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right. Sorry, I didn't deal with the viability. Where's the? Could you just tell me the viability? SA5 and SA6. So BLV,
Yeah, so
SA5.
SA5 is BLV3.
Okay.
It's got a number of sites across. So we've got entry 117, which is viable at 60%.
60.
Yeah, 60.
Oh, this one.
There is one. We've got entry 114,
Yeah.
which is viable at 50%, 50.
Yeah.
We've got entry 135, which is viable at 60%. We've got entry 120, which is viable at 60%, 60, and entry 132, which is viable at 60%, 60.
Okay, that's that little block of green on the switch, isn't it? I remember it now. Okay, and SA6.
Not viability tested.
Oh, not viability tested. And that's the LLPC. Right, okay. Okay, right. So I'm going to have a break now, and we'll come on to SA7, which I know people are interested.
Is joining the two.
Okay.
I don't know whether you want to reschedule.
Okay, yeah. We'll have a break of 20 minutes anyway, and then we can leave SA7 until the end if you wish. Yeah. It's faster than you were envisaging then.
Yeah.
You'd be safe with that. Okay, so we'll break now to 11:20. I think we'll.
Yeah.
I've got everyone's
Sorry, I should have said that before. Yeah, you know, but it just may be a little bit easier for me to hear and you to. Okay, are you sorted? Yeah, thank you. So shall we move on to N8, then go back to N7? Yeah? Right, so, sorry, SA8, sorry, then we'll go back to SA7. So, yes, N8, SA8 is Bridgewater Road, 4 hectares or so, capacity 677 or 575, and 5-year supply, all of it. And that's based on a outline permission.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
So we phased it based on data that was in the environmental impact assessment scoping report, which suggested that construction would be between around 2027 and 2031. So we phased it within a 5-year lifetime.
Okay, well, we've got the promoters here, haven't we, so they can otherwise. It says outline permission for the 575.
Yes, it is.
But the capacity for the 5-year supply is 677.
Yes, that's based on design and capacity testing for the higher figure.
Yeah.
And they are looking to submit a variation to that application to increase the capacity.
Okay, well, we can hear about that in due course. Okay, so it's one where there needs to be clear evidence that it will be deliverable in 5 years. So I'll come to that. In terms of viability, can we just tick that off? What have we got? BLV?
Yeah, sure. So that's BLD 3.
Yep.
Rule 26, viable at 45%.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so sorry, so just say that again. So the trajectory is based on the information provided by, with the outline planning?
It was in the original outline planning application, and it's in the environmental impact assessment scoping report, which had construction plan guidelines in it. Okay,
but the deliverability of 677 would depend on a new planning commission.
Yes, it would.
Hasn't even been
so
put in.
I think it's, from memory, I think it's got a scoping application at the moment. To up the permission to around, I think, about a similar level to what we've designed and capacity tested for.
Okay, so you've got active promoters for the site, you've got progress on planning application variation or whatever, and this only assumes development will start in 2 years' time or so. Is it in year? Yeah, so it'd be in 27, 28, wouldn't it? So you're confident that that's a reasonable position to scale that. Okay, right. So we'll come on to the LLDC and Ballymore. Both got interest. You own parts of the site.
Yes.
So you own all of it between the two of you.
We own the site in its entirety.
Oh, you own all of it. Sorry. Okay.
Joint venture agreement.
Okay. Yeah. So you outlined. I know you picked up some specific policy requirements. Yeah.
Just to clarify the planning situation, just to confirm what was just been said. The planning permission was granted for a scheme back in 2023. Bridgewater is one of the 4 LLDC portfolio sites, this is something that is it worth me expanding on that?
I read it, but just briefly, just to give me the.
Basically, going back to the site, SA5, I think, the Stratford Waterfront Residential Scheme formed part of a wider Stratford Waterfront project that introduced a series of non-residential uses into the parks of the BBC, Victoria and Albert, Sadler's Wells, etc., which restricted the ability for that site to deliver affordable housing on site. And therefore, an agreement was put in place that the balance of affordable housing would then be distributed across 3 other sites, one of which is the Bridgewater Triangle site, what we call Bridgewater Triangle. The other one is Pudding Mill, and the third one is Route Roberts Way. And within that Stratford Waterfront Commission, there was an expectation that Bridgewater Triangle would deliver 50% of affordable housing on that site to help meet the wider portfolio target. So in the 2023 consent secured permission for floor space that could, as we said, deliver about 575 units. Following the development of our development partner, we have worked to address viability issues on that scheme and increase the development capacity to approximately 700 units. And we've been working very closely with the borough over the course of the past 12 months on those proposals, and a Section 73 submission associated applications will be made early in the new year for determination. And that will deliver 52% affordable housing by habitable rooms, and about 50% by unit. So our 2 main concerns with the policy, or 2 constraints of the policy that we have, the first of them is the cap of 50 metres. We think this would be difficult to accommodate both our scheme, but also the 680 units that the borough itself aspires to. The layout proposed by the borough, we believe, is suboptimal, creating a dense mass of taller elements within the centre of the site, with seemingly little consideration to sort of daylight, sunlight impacts, either on courtyards, public and play spaces, or the allotment sites to the north. It almost seems exclusively to be based on flatted blocks and no houses. So as I say, over the course of the past 12 months, we've been working very closely with Newham to develop a scheme in which we have sought to distribute the density and the height to the edges of the site, with smaller footprints to allow lower height in the centre around the central areas, providing light to the internal streets, courtyards and the allotments, with careful consideration to open space and play space requirements. As a result of this, we've increased height up to 82 metres at its highest point, but decreased heights as well, importantly, in the centre of the site. And this has been discussed at length with 8 pre-app meetings with borough officers, and has gone through 4 design review panel meetings with Newham's own advisors. Therefore, it has been subject to the most serious testing, and we believe we have support for this application, or support for this proposal as we move towards a submission. Just on the height, I do have one very minor query on one of the modifications which I mentioned at the very beginning. While we do obviously have quite a big difference on the issue of height. In modification MO105,
just tell me.
I don't have it. Sorry, I don't have it to hand, so I don't have access to the.
This one, sorry?
The schedule of
Yes.
It's on page 23.
23, yeah. Okay. So it's over the site allocation, is it? Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, go on.
Very minor modification, but we were looking to remove the word "and" so that there was direct link between overshadowing and the functionality of the allotments. It wasn't going to be 2 separate tests. It was just a single test. Overshadowing would only be related to whether it impacted on the functionality of the allotments. We did discuss this with the borough in the run-up to the statement of common ground, and thought that we'd agreed that you would support the word being removed, but I didn't see that removal in the modification, so I just wanted to check whether that was something that the borough was still happy with.
I think we had got to the conclusion that it was a partial agreement because we had modified it to this point working with you, and I think that word was still we were not 100% comfortable with removing that word because of the functionality and how important that is to the allotments.
I think our point was there may be some overshadowing,
Yeah.
but we would manage and mitigate that so that it would not impact on the functionality of the allotment. So we would do things like we would look at the plot layout of the allotments, and that would help. We think under the existing 106, that would already allow us to ensure that the functionality of the allotments is protected. So to prevent overshadowing as a test in itself would be incredibly difficult to do under any scheme, including the scheme put forward by the borough. So
on that point, there was an action point from last week, which was about overshadowing effect on watercourse. And I think I suggested some wording there to tackle a similar thing. So maybe you just need to think about whether it's a comparable sort of tweak to that, because, you know, some overshadowing may be inevitable.
Yes.
The solution probably is for it to be designed to avoid or minimise harmful effects from any overshadowing. I think is probably what I suggested in relation to whatever. I think it was the water courses, wasn't it, last week? So I think maybe it's a similar sort of point on that.
And just to reassure everyone, we've done a huge amount of work trying to ensure that the functionality of the allotment is protected.
Yeah.
And so we're not trying to in any way diminish it, but we're just trying to be realistic and say that actually there may be some overshadowing, but the functionality will be, there'll be enough growing hours in the day, and the way we align with the way we could potentially reconfigure the allotment plots would mean that nobody would be negative.
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm not considering your planning application or any particular scheme. I'm considering the words and the picture in the plan. So when you refer to the what did you say? The layout being too densely in the middle. I mean, is it the indicative? Well, sorry, that this map, site map, has an area of allotment and has some green, and I suppose by default, the rest is where the development is steered to by that map. Is that what you're alluding to?
I was looking at the site capacity study that was done.
Well, that's not part of the plan.
Okay.
Yeah. So your application will be considered in. I'm not examining that as such. I mean, that's evidence for what ends up in the plan.
Yeah.
Your application would be considered in the context of this site map, which is now being proposed to be relabeled indicative.
Yeah.
And there's also some text that I've suggested in one of the action points about qualifying what it means in terms of the indicative nature of it.
Yeah.
And then the wording, obviously, of this policy in terms of what it says about the prescription. Now, you picked up two specific things, one about the layout and the allotments and how you could put the layout in there. I suppose if this was indicative and there's a qualification to it, would that concern still remain? Because I can't try and assess your scheme and consider it's whether this policy and the map that goes with it, with those qualifications, provides an appropriate framework.
I suppose what we're trying to avoid is a situation where any overshadowing on the allotments becomes a reason for, and I think that would be unreasonable.
Well, any tall building there, the sun goes around that way. It's going to create some shadows on the allotment.
Yeah, and I think we can. And I think the point is we can address that through mitigation, either through the location and the design of the building, and through the what we can do in terms of reconfiguring the plots of the allotment, which we already have an obligation to look at as part of our existing 106.
Yeah. Okay. So, well. It's MO105, isn't it? Yeah, and it's the specific wording within there about overshadowing.
It's just that and before and to protect the functionality.
Yeah.
That last bit bold.
Okay, we'll leave that one with me. I can think about that. So the other point about the flexibility to allow the allotments, is that block the existing allotments?
Yes.
And the policy is to retain those.
Yes.
So that is a given, which you don't necessarily dispute.
No.
Oh, okay. So there's not too much wrong with this site map then.
No, sorry.
Okay, fine. Okay. So I think maybe
the elements are outside our red line, so we will not be developing, building on them or.
Okay, so that's not a dispute. So there's nothing actually too wrong with this indicative.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So the building heights then is the
building height was the building height was the main issue. And the second issue we had was this may be picked up in a later issue, but it's the extension of the sink designation.
Oh yes.
On the park, which seems to include, it seems to extend itself over areas of so we did.
Sorry, where's that in the policy?
It's from the sync. It's from the sync map.
Ah,
The sync map.
on the policies.
On the proposals map,
The
in
proposal.
the text, there is reference to it in the design principles.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Fifth paragraph under design principles.
Good if they remember.
Yeah. So it says the layout of the site should protect the site of importance for nature conservation.
Yeah.
So we've overlaid that, and it does compromise the delivery of a significant amount of housing. I think we calculated about 300 units.
Yes, that's one of the densest parts of the site.
One of the densest parts of the site. So again, we tried to engage prior to the submission of the plan for the evidence for this justification for this, but it wasn't provided. I think it was alluded to in a report produced after the submission of the plan, but we still believe that is not fully justified, and we would seek its removal from the policies plan.
Well, I think in terms of the tall buildings, I think you've heard the discussion that we had last week and the action point and the more flexibility, but if there's a difference between 82 metres and 50 metres, well, I don't think that's something I can really address in this, in this environment. It's something for the planning application to work through. Anything you want to say?
No, I think I just can say that, of course, the site has been assessed against the adopted plan, not against this plan, and it's very advanced to change it and reverse to 50 meters. But if we have 50 meters and more flexibility, I think it will address the issue.
In terms of the sink, then, what's the sink is a local designation.
Yes.
Yeah, and there are existing sinks defined on the adopted policies map and the LLDC map, presumably. Policies.
Yeah, so the work that we did to the sinks, we did a sink review, and as part of that, there were some extensions to the Greenway sink, and this is one of those extensions. So that has been published and has been published all along. However, we did recognise that the mapping that sat within the sinks for those areas, because they're such small extensions, they were hard to see. So yes, they were published on the policies map, but the change that we made to the 2025 version, which was with the submission, is just to zoom into those areas to show where those extensions to the Greenway have happened. So it's not changing the designation from Regulation 19, it's just providing clarity within the document as to where they are. And we also asked the London Wildlife Trust to look at the site again and to justify that extension. And they've come back to us in between Reg 19 and then the submission to say that the area has been included. It's like other semi-natural areas of vegetation on the Greenway. In their view, it's supplementary habitat and it strengthens the green corridor, and it provides an ecological link between the Greenway and the allotments to the north. It should be said that there is flexibility within the plan. Policy Green Water Space 3 does set out, as with the London plan, a mitigation hierarchy. So if sink can't be protected on the site as it is, it can be mitigated for through the development as suitable when we get to development management. So it is sink, it's been designated as sink, it's there, irrespective of the point at which this application is.
Well, it's only designated as sink through this plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but it's been, the methodology of the sink review has said that it meets the criteria for sink.
Yeah.
So the review has proposed it to be designated as sink. Yes.
Yeah, but
through this plan, it doesn't exist currently.
No,
That's fine. Sorry to clarify that.
Yeah, because there are some nature conservation designations that are achieved through other statutory means.
Yes.
This is one that's just a local designation.
Yes,
it only has any status through this plan. Yeah. Okay. So we'll deal with its the general approach and justification under GWS3. In terms of the layout map, the site map, it shows the allotments and it shows opportunity for green space. It doesn't show anything designated as sink. Is that, but would the sink be within what's shown as green space? It wouldn't extend any further than that. No. So that green space designation reflects the policies map, the sink designation, and the existing green space. Okay. Right. Okay, understood. Anything more?
I think they were the two key points.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Yeah, Ballymore, sorry.
Yeah, so it's reiterating all the points that the LLDC have already made. It's not adding nothing new, but again, building heights, recognising potential additional flexibility that might be written into wording. But there's a lot of constraints and infrastructure requirements for this site. An area of the existing allotments have to be protected, public open space, local play, and this the green space in the sink.
Yeah.
And again, but alongside that, quite a high requirement for housing and affordable housing, and just balancing those together with obviously taller buildings to allow all of those wider public benefits to come forward. We are in a transform area, low sensitivity to change and high opportunity for growth. So yeah, obviously we think there is opportunity for height greater than the 16 stories. Yeah, same concerns about the sink and how that limits the developable area of the site in conflict with the external permission.
Okay, understood. I don't think, yeah, okay. It's a kind of recurring theme about, proposals being put forward and how they fit with the planning policies, etc., and the development process. So I fully understand the issues and the viability issues. So all of those things I'll have to, consider when we've been through all these allocations. Thank you. Okay. In terms of the timing of the 5 years supply, you're in agreement with the council in terms of it progressing and being completed by 2032.
Hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So fine. That's. But obviously, it's a new scheme being put forward.
It is a new scheme, and obviously there's a planning application going in very shortly. So with a fair wind, we certainly hope so. Yes.
So we can include that one on the 5-year supply list. Right, shall we, before I forget, shall we go back to SA7? Yep, all present now. So SA7 is a 4.3 hectare site. Capacity is shown to be 389 or 391, so.
Yeah, no, apologies. It was, I think there's been like a minor, a non-mat to increase it by a couple of units, which is where there's a slight discrepancy.
It's a full planning permission,
Yes.
247, and that's the bit that's assumed in the 5-year.
Yeah, so there's the 247 in 5 years, which is the gas holder part of the site that's got full permission, and then the remainder of the site we anticipate to come forward in the medium term. Okay,
well, St William and LDDC can comment on that. But the rest would be assumed to be, other than that bit on the gas holder part, the rest would be after year 6.
It would be 6 to
10. Okay, thank you. And in viability?
Viability terms, BLV3.
Yeah.
Raw 74.
74?
Yeah.
Yeah.
35%.
Okay. Okay, well, do you want to talk me through the issues at LLDC? This is another of the portfolio sites, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so a similar thing. It's, I've noted the comments, but do you want to just talk me through the main things?
Yeah, I can start. So, as you've noted, the Rickmansworth Way site is one of the development sites in the affordable housing portfolio. I think it's worth noting that in terms of the obligation that it has in providing affordable housing, it's the remaining balance of the shortfall that would arise from all of the other sites. And at the moment, we have identified a shortfall of approximately 730 affordable habitable rooms, which is I guess at an average of 3 habitable rooms per unit is around 230 units. And then on top of that, we also have a Section 106 obligation arising from the Legacy Community Scheme that requires us to provide over 400 units, which is basically more than what the outline permission is currently. And that is essentially to try and address as much as possible the loss of homes that was arising from the delivery of non-residential users at Stratford Waterfront.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of where the connection is. And so we are sort of in question of the site capacity that's been assumed of 390 units, because excluding St William's floor plan permission, that leaves around 150 units perhaps for the remaining of the site, but we have an obligation to provide more than 400 units. So it's kind of a question of, in terms of the vision for the site and how that has influenced the sort of policy wording that's in it. And we note that there is a requirement to protect and enhance existing sports and recreation uses, which at the moment is the paddle tennis club, and that's the existing sports and recreation use. However, that is an interim use and it only has temporary permission. And we also, as the owners of the site, have a lease agreement with them that expires in 2027. So this is a temporary use and is not intended at all to be permanent, but we do have a concern with the wording to protect and enhance it, which is in the development principles.
Yeah.
And the other issue that we have in terms of land use is also the requirement to provide employment uses and to prioritise light industrial uses within those. And again, the extant permission for Rip Roberts Way envisages residential use and a school on the LBN, on the Newham owned site, and only envisages about 550 square metres of food and drink and retail uses to activate the Stratford High Street. So that's the LCS outline permission. So we consider that the vision that's expressed in the site allocation is in conflict with the extant permission, which dates back to 2012. And we're essentially, our intention is to deliver the site sort of in line of the land uses that are in there, just that we would follow the obligation to deliver more than 400 units, as explained earlier, to compensate for the loss.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's no capacity in this plan, which we've discussed.
Yeah.
So there's no limit. There's design principles and development principles to comply with, obviously, or to take into account at the planification stage.
Yeah.
So I suppose the question is, you referred to the protect and enhance existing sports recreation.
Yeah.
There's the point after that is 1.2 hectares of open space should be provided. I don't know how those two things relate to each other, whether they're additional to each other.
Yeah, they're additional to each other. I think the Newham might come into that, but I think the facility for leisure is a separate leisure facility.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm talking about the open space bits at the minute.
Yeah, that's separate to the leisure.
So it's not so much the 1.2 hectares you're referring to, it's protect and enhance the existing sports and recreation use.
Yes.
Yeah? And which club is that on this?
So that would be directly on Stratford High Street, as it currently, that's where the paddle tennis club is. That's the only existing sports and recreation use, but it's temporary.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we're trying to understand, if that's what it's in reference to, because that's the only thing it could be at the moment.
Whereas these green areas are just indicative where the new open space would be.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes. Okay, do you want to talk about what this is to do, the existing, protect and enhance existing sports and recreation uses?
Yeah, so I think in terms of where the leisure facilities come from, that's evidence in the built leisure needs assessment. I know you alluded to that they're not saying that this site was specifically to that, but how we've kind of looked to address the needs identified in that strategy is identified the need within Stratford. This site obviously is quite a large site and does have public ownership on it, so we kind of deemed it as a suitable site to deliver that type of facility, and the success of the paddle court, but it's not really to deliver the paddle court as such, it's to address the leisure facility need that we've identified. And then in terms of the kind of the protection element. I don't know, Naomi, would you want to comment on that?
Not the protection as such, but just to say that the need for sports facilities on this was derived from the built leisure needs assessment, which identified the Stratford area, and then the site was identified as being suitable to bring forward that need. And it's not, as Lily points out, necessarily for the paddle, but there are space requirements, and I think the policy does say that it has to be, it does refer back to the development management policy, which would look at the built leisure needs assessment.
Yeah, it refers to SI1 and SI3.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's the process.
Yeah, and then that refers to the built leisure needs assessment. So it's for a full badminton court sports hall, which has been identified with the built leisure needs assessment.
And that point between the relationship between this apparently specific site-specific requirement and the reference to Part 1 policies SI1, SI3 in this case, brings me back to another action point,
exactly,
which was about clarifying the relationship where there's an apparently prescriptive site-specific requirement, how it could be addressed differently or alternatively through the application of the Part 1 policies, which I think is again something where council would look at.
Yeah, I think it's just in terms of the history of the site that it's putting this at Williams site to one side for the second, but there's the LLDC owned element of Roberts Way to the north, and then there's Newham owned Chuckerland to the south. And the idea would be that the LLDC would very much deliver the residential elements of its scheme in the north, and that a school will be delivered on the Newham owned land in the south, and that would help pick up quite a big element of the open space. It could also double up with providing that sort of enhanced sports facility. We delivered secondary schools in the park, and we provided community availability for those facilities, and think that could also have done that function could also be performed here. So to move that sort of obligation onto the residential element of the site, so it runs against that principle, but also compromises the ability for the LLDC to meet its own planning obligations as well.
Where does that?
I was talking about the history of the site.
Yeah, but what's wrong with the policy in terms of where the school would be?
I think it's the specific wording of protection and enhancement of existing. So the school is not an issue in terms of where it would be. I think the issue is the protection and enhancement of existing sports and recreation uses, because the existing as it stands is the paddle tennis, and it is on our land, which is not intended to be permanent. So that's the point that we want to come across.
Yeah, okay.
And then I think in the infrastructure requirements as well, it does refer to a multi-use games area, which we already envisaged would go on the school site. So it's a question, and that's separate to the sports hall. So it's a question of, how the capacity has been assessed in terms of what we envisage would come forward versus what's in the policy wording itself.
Okay, so there's reference in under the infrastructure requirements to the open space and the 1.2 hectares, which is again referred to earlier, and the locally equipped play, the local area, multi-use games area, and also another point about sports hall provision. So going back to what you were saying about the needs assessment and indoor leisure and recreation. So is that the sports hall that would deliver that?
Yes, the sports hall is the badminton court, and then there's a separate need for a MUGA on the site, and that's also evidenced with the built leisure needs assessment.
Okay.
But I don't think it's prescriptive as to
No, I don't think so, no.
I think
But it goes back to the point that I think about the protection of the existing things and how that relates to these things that are being required as new things under the infrastructure requirements relating to sports hall. So the way you described it not necessarily being the paddle tennis, then it might be the sports hall that provides what's needed.
Yeah, so it's the sorry to clarify, so
it's
the third paragraph that's in contention, and I think
so.
The stumbling block, because we say protect and enhance, and that we can take that away and have a look at it. It might have been a drafting in terms of we're taking a consistent approach to our language across sites, but on this instance, it's caused concern with regards to that paddle being an aspect. So we'll look at that.
And if you could just get rid of that, and it's all dealt with under what's required under infrastructure, that's what we're looking to provide. Well, I think that would probably solve it
From everyone's point, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we just want to maximise use of land for affordable housing, and also sports and recreation and co-locations are really key. With the London plan, it's also within our plan as well.
Yeah, understood, yeah.
We can take that.
It's just that clarity, isn't it? I mean, in some cases, there may be something on a site that needs to be protected exactly where it is for whatever reason.
Exactly.
But you say this isn't the case here, that it's the provision of these things that's needed.
Precisely.
Yeah, okay. Right, thank you. Okay.
Sorry, thank
Yes,
you.
please.
There was also the other point about the employment uses
Yes.
forward and prioritising light industrial uses. That's another one that we are slightly concerned about, because that's not what we envisage through the outline consent that we have.
And what would you be looking for if it's not light industry?
So what we're looking at, essentially in line with the outline permission, is for the majority of it to be residential development, and the part that wouldn't be residential would be retail to activate the Stratford High Street. So that's what we're looking at, but it would be a small element.
So it's not employment uses in the definition of industry. Okay, so what's the justification for industrial in this location? I know there's a need for industrial floor space, obviously.
I think it kind of goes back to what we've been discussing on other sites. But so this site went through the site sifting, and it was identified as potential to provide the light industrial to complement the adjacent Lille at Rick Roberts Way. So that's got to be compatible with the residential, and it doesn't compromise that it's a residential-led scheme, taking note obviously of the legacy LCS permission, that obviously that being residential led also, but it goes back to the employment land review essentially.
And there's no need for a retail in this scheme?
No. I do believe it said about activating the front, but ultimately, it's residential led, and the employment aspect is important.
Just to be clear, when we list spaces, employment uses, that wouldn't include retail, would it?
Sorry.
Your definition.
Sorry.
Just right at the top, the development principles. Each policy starts with a list of uses.
Yeah.
So this is residential, employment.
Oh, sorry.
Sports.
Yeah. No, that wouldn't.
So employment in this plan equals.
I think industrial and office and everything under J1. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's what's set out in J1.
Yeah. Okay. So the justification in this case would be retail to improve viability and deliver more affordable homes and the scale of development needed, etc., etc. Okay. Well, again, I don't want to say any more. I mean, it's just like the extent to which the plan needs to be adjusted to meet the particular scheme being put forward for viability reasons, or the plan is, justified as it is for the reasons that the council has, and it's then a matter of negotiation. I mean, I suppose the other thing, you've got an adopted plan that this site's within, presumably. And at the moment, development management's in the context of that, with this having some weight, but whatever. So
we do envisage that once we do submit, it would probably most likely be subject to the new plan.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just making sure that some of those visions align, because the site allocation in the adopted LDC local plan did envisage 750 homes and did not envisage light industrial in this area. It does envisage play space and open space and the MUGA, which we were looking at in the school, but also not looking at retention of schools, which I appreciate we've already addressed in terms of the wording, but so I guess that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Right, anything else on SA7? Yes.
It was just in relation to St William's and the comments we made. I don't know whether you had any comments.
On what, sorry?
Question. The St William part of the site, sir?
Yes, please, yeah.
In our representations, we've said that we think there are opportunities for greater height on the site. We have a consent for 16 stories. We recently had pre-application discussions with officers for 20 stories, which are supported. So we'd like the site application to reflect the additional height for that as the taller element of the scheme. So changing it from 50 metres to 60 metres. And then the other concern that we had was just about the site capacity element, where it seems to have reduced by half. Now, obviously our site at the moment currently makes up 78% of that overall delivery for the site allocation. So there's probably not too many concerns from my client side on that perspective, but what we don't want to happen is for, if we go in with an application in the future and then they say, well, the site capacity says this, and then it restricts other development because there's a consideration that other residential units would come forward on that site. So they're the two key points from our perspective in relation to that site.
Yes, and their points made in relation to many of the allocations. I mean, in terms of the capacity, I mean, the site, the plan doesn't have a capacity. And we had a discussion about that last week because it's unusual. And the consensus was, the council explained why that was the case, because of it being a design-led approach. And there's loads of examples of where very different capacities have been worked through and may be acceptable on sites, and therefore having a figure is just, it's meaningless and could be unhelpful. It could be seen as a limit or whatever. So the plan doesn't have a capacity. So I think on that one, it's, you know, I know you may say, well, there's the capacity study was done and it's done that, but I mean, that was just a way of working something out to give an overall scale of development that the plan is seeking to promote.
I think just on that sense, in the site capacity study, the layout that is allocated for client site isn't reflective of the permission.
No.
So there is a discrepancy between that. It does identify a building element on the northern part of the site, which is obviously great for us. But it's just making sure that there isn't a discrepancy between what's been approved.
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm not approving in any way the design and capacity, the capacity study work. I mean, it is what it is. It was there to serve a particular purpose to kind of work out something that I need is, you know, how much development is this plan realistically likely to deliver? And it has no more status than that. And there's various things we've already qualified about the indicative nature of the maps and the various qualifications being put. And in terms of the heights, well, you know, it's the same thing again and again, and I'll keep, you know, we've made some progress in terms of thinking about how to address it, and I'll continue to have a think about it and hear examples of similar sort of points being made. Okay, so thank you for contributions on that one. Unless there's anything else anybody wishes to say, I'll move on to, yes, Elliot.
Just a very, very minor question. I appreciate that there's going to be a change in wording from maximum to appropriate height. I think the only thought is how that will be applied to site allocations is a thought, because I appreciate that there's that height range in the policy wording. So it would be useful to understand if any modifications will be done there, because we do consider it quite specific to set limits on the site.
Well, the way it's phrased, isn't it?
Yeah.
It does. It should range between X and Y. So that does still imply that's a maximum in a way. So yes, I think that's a valid point. Partly comes back to the relationship between site allocation policies and Part 1 policies again. But I think that, it might be something you do need to think about how it's expressed in those. Because it's kind of premised on it being a maximum, isn't it? And it being something that you work within that. But you don't need to respond now on that.
Yeah, we can
think about that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anything else on that one? No. So where does that leave us? Let's say 9 on next, aren't we? Which is again another one that shuffle around again. Okay. Thank you. So this is. SA9 Pudding Mill. So 15.7 hectares to the south of the Olympic Park. Range of uses, capacity, we've got a range here, haven't we?
I don't think there is a range in this site, no.
Oh, is there not?
No, sorry.
Oh, no. Well, if you look at the pro forma,
yes, of course.
I've got two figures here. I've got design-led capacity and then a planning permission.
Bear with me. Yes, so I believe now where we're at with the site, I think we put in design-led capacity testings into those pro formas.
Okay.
For information about what we designed and capacity tested for, but for this particular site, I'll just
in the trajectory.
But everything's in the trajectory's got permission.
Okay.
So it's not a range site.
No. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Everything's based on the permission numbers.
Yeah. So the capacity for this site is 2315 based on the planning permissions.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and they're all full planning permissions with the exception of one site, which is the Barbers Road site, which is an outline application for 948 units. And It does have permission, but units are in outline. And we have 790 units of that outline in the 5-year land supply. And looking at my notes, we based that assumption off of the LLDC's trajectory when they brought planning plans back to us as to when they felt that the site was going to come forward.
Okay, so of the 1839 in the 5-year supply,
yeah,
most of it has got full planning permission.
Yes.
But it's about 700 of it, did you say?
790, so just under 800.
Okay, 790 is within the LLDC outline scheme. Okay. Right, okay. And the viability assessment?
Viability, roll 68, BLV2. It's viable at 35%, and it's a margin of viability at 40%.
What was the definition of marginal again? It's coloured differently, is it?
Orange, yeah.
Orange, I think. And I think he said it was 5 to 10%, was it?
Yeah.
Something like that. On those figures, I can't remember, wasn't it?
Can get back to you.
Okay, don't worry. Yeah, okay, thank you. Anything else the council want to say before I hand over? Okay. LLDC, yeah, so.
Craig Roberts, Senior Plan Manager at the LLDC. Hello. Could probably sound a bit like a broken record to the building heights, but yeah, there's the key comment here from the LLDC side of things was the consistency with the outline planning permission in terms of the heights there. Currently, the policy does stay up to the sort of 45 metres. However, when the permission was approved back in 2023, that did include parameter heights of up to 95 metres and other development parcels up to 60 metres and above up to 55 metres. So there's a number of discrepancies across the LLDC master plan area and what's in the current policy wording in terms of assumptions for heights. Obviously, those building heights have been tested through the design review panel at the outline stage and were deemed to be acceptable. And that was making sure then that a scheme of 948 units could come forward within those parameters as well. Today, we have actually been bringing forward phase 1 and 2 of the reserve matters of that master plan. So phase 1 for 355 units, looking at a total of 80% affordable within phase 1. And phase 2 will potentially bring forward 255 units with a zero affordable housing in that phase. However, we will still be meeting the 45% by have room affordable housing requirement across the master plan. The first phase 1 reserve matters is due to be submitted in 2 weeks' time. Very busy period for us all. We've had extensive engagement with Newham officers on that, and that phase 1 did include the parameter of up to 65 metres. The phase 2 was also had discussions with Newham officers, and that is actually looking to sort of reallocate some of the height from phase 4 of the outline permission into phase 2, but keeping consistent with the approved parameter of up to 95 metres. Again, that's been through design review panel process, and we've had positive conversations with officers on that move. So we are just sort of highlighting that there is that sort of inconsistency between information that's readily available, and want to make sure that the policy wording moving forward is reflective of those heights that have been approved and will be delivered to ensure that there is that consistency across the piece.
Okay. In terms of the phase 1, in terms of this 700, there is 790, sorry, that's assumed to contribute to the 5-year supply. The 5-year supply being from 2027 to 2032, which you may or may not picked up on. But what was your phase 1?
So phase 1 is 355.
355.
Yeah.
So it would be part of phase 2 as well, then, would it?
Yeah.
To achieve that.
Yes. Yeah. Phase 1 and phase 2. So we are looking to get on site with phase 1 late summer next year. It's assumed that the 2 to 3 year build out period for that, and likewise phase 2 will be the year after. And again, likewise 2 to 3 year build period.
So clearly within that 5-year period.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
All right, thank you, that's helpful. Okay, well, it's the same issue again, isn't it? I mean, your general response to it was set out in your topic paper about the relationship between the plan and planning permissions. You know, there's only so many times we can have this discussion. But
yeah, I mean, if I can add something, is that I think in most of those sites we actually generally align with what was initially permitted when we did at that point in time. The problem here is that there are many iterations of the outline permission coming forward that are not aligned with what we had in 2021 when we did this. And so, yeah, I think it's just trying to understand if this is a sound, yeah. But I think the approach that we had was sound, really consider everything. And the portfolio approach of all these three sites, they were pretty much in line with the 50 meters height that we had. It's more related to viability and the fact that most of the planning applications are coming forward again to improve the viability and assessing, yeah, trying to address the issue and require more height. So it's not that it's, you know, I think most of the applicants have already optimized their sites when they did the first planning application, but now it's a different context and of course trying to address all of this. But as we said, we are changing with appropriate height. This can be helpful.
Yeah, okay. Again, it brings me back onto another action point, doesn't it, that arose from last week, which was, well, the viability evidence shows all of these allocations pretty much are not viable with 60% affordable. Well, sorry, I deliberately didn't say that. All of the allocations in this plan, most of, are not viable on their evidence with all of the policy requirements. And I asked the council, therefore, in a hypothetical, if I were to conclude that that was a soundness issue, what policies they would propose be modified. And I left it as open as that. I mean, one solution would be, you know, taller, wouldn't it? If that's the solution that's being put forward by developers, that's addressing viability, that's one lever that could be pulled. Obviously, the obvious one is the 60% affordable housing, but there are others. So that's where we're at with that, to get a better understanding of, you know, the viability situation. So there's a lot of things that are being, that I'm juggling with. So I think, you know, I'm going to leave it as we are at the moment and see where things map out as we go through these discussions on various sites, etc., etc. But I do also appreciate the LLDC and the particular where you're coming from and the sort of the background and the portfolio approach and things like that in that particular case. So actually, do you want to respond to the point that you made there that's evolved in terms of building heights for viability reasons? Is that?
Yeah, I'll touch on it in terms of Pinnimill Lane. That did have to be re-looked at. Likewise with the Bridgewater Triangle site that we've mentioned, and Green Roberts Way is obviously going to be looked at as well. I think, though, in terms of the information that's been available, obviously the permission was application was submitted in 2021. And then was approved in 2023 due to subject to this Section 106, and obviously a lot of refinement. Then the Stratford Watford Stream had to be varied as well. So there has been a lot of change. We do accept that. But we obviously have tried to make this case clear through the representations through the Reg 18, Reg 19, and through the Statement of Common Ground. But there was not willing to do that through the Statement of Common Ground. It was very much set. So we have tried to sort of put that information that's been available through the representation and the Statement of Common Ground process. So that's why obviously we're here today to ensure that those points are sort of addressed in that context is fully understood.
And also, if I could just add to that, we do have very challenging affordable housing targets on our sites. And I think we're exceeding the ones that you set out in your viability report, certainly on Pinnimill and on Bridgewater.
Yeah.
So where we have dealt with viability issues, not just in terms of the general environment, but also in terms of response to building regulations, we've clearly had to respond to those in order to get the schemes, to get the amount of affordable housing that our obligations require us to.
Those obligations could be varied, couldn't they?
I mean, as a public body, part of the GLA group, we're expected to provide 50%. So I think there's a
policy.
Strong, yes.
Yeah. But again, it's back to the question I asked the council. Well, look, something's got to get, where are the priorities? This is the council's plan now. It's the council's area. They're a planning authority. It's they're the authority that's responsible for prioritising, you know, affordable homes, an approach to tall buildings against other policy requirements. So that's the context now. But anyway, interesting. Understood. I've got the points. Yeah.
One point. I know we did talk about the modifications document that was uploaded this morning.
Yeah.
The overshadowing of the waterways point is there. Obviously, our site will be coming forward with reserve matters. And obviously, given that we are quite a significant area, that site allocation is inevitable. We have approved built form close to those waterways, but we don't want to be in a position where sort of policy wording to that effect is because of overshadowing of the waterways means that it's not going to be acceptable in design terms. So again, it's that flexibility. It's inevitable that an element of built form will result in some form of overshadowing, but should it not result in a significant impact on the waterways and the function of the waterway.
So on you're talking SA9 still? Or SA9, yes? Is there an overshadowing waterway? It's not a modification.
It was on the
original
modifications document, and it was listed as a sort of category applying to SA.
The reference there was MO 23.22, because we raised the same point in relation to the
reference what, sorry?
MO 23.22. That's where the modification came from. Page 91. Submission reference SD 004.
I'm not looking at that schedule. I'm looking at the council's schedule that is put forward now. Sorry. That's why I'm listening.
13. And it's
I was in the tall buildings one, is it?
So it applies to lots of different
okay.
So we group them together.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And it's in the table. Oh no, it does apply to the okay.
Yeah.
You group them together. So buildings should be set back from water spaces to avoid overshadowing impact. Yeah. That's
it.
So you're saying sorry.
There needs to be greater flexibility, I think, to the point about that, because if there's an overshadowing, but if there's overshadowing, is that the impact? It's not acceptable. It's just very literal in terms of this wording, and I think it needs to be a bit more fluid to allow the sort of development management processes to test that harm.
So insofar as this wording appeared in the tall buildings policy.
Yeah, if I can give a bit of context, we have already that line in several sites. But the environmental agency flagged that there was no consistency through the plan. So basically now we have looked at all the sites and make sure that it was applied to all the sites that were in proximity to water courses. But one of the points that the inspector made, the actual note was to change slightly the wording, and instead of having avoid the impact was like reduce the impact something at the time. So we look at that.
It came up in the D4 policy box, where there was reference to tall buildings, table 1 in policy D4. And it required to avoid overshadowing impacts, which is the same as this.
Yeah.
So you can't really avoid any, not if you're going to put a tall building, you wouldn't have done it. Unless it was.
Yeah.
So what I suggested the council consider, or something similar, was to prevent harmful impacts on biodiversity or water quality by avoiding or minimising overshadowing, something to that effect. So it's avoiding a harmful impact on something by minimising or avoiding the overshadowing. Which was, and I think that then similar sort of wording would probably apply to how it appears in here. So. It's hard writing. Yeah. It's a very big plan. It's got a lot of words in it. As I've said many times. Right. Anything else on the sites you're interested on this side of the table?
On behalf of London Square now. Only the points that we've raised in
on this site.
So the overshadowing point, the heights again, there's a better opportunity. We've obviously got a consent for 16 stories. We went into 20. We actually withdrew that application in the end following LDC's response on that. But the testing that we did undertake and support that application showed that 20 stories was acceptable, and we think there's an opportunity for even greater height on the site as well. And that comes back to the deliverability of the scheme, conflicts that are now facing developer and second stakeholders, etc.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything new insofar as what we've written there.
No, okay. There was something about the mix of employment uses.
Yeah. Yes.
And the quantity.
there is a line in there that says development should provide the same quantity of business and industrial floor space as the permitted schemes. And we are suggesting that is removed just to provide a bit more flexibility in terms of the deliverability of residential schemes and viability overall. I think that it could be an overall constraint on the site.
Yeah, it's an unusual requirement. This is at the bottom of the first column, so it's the fourth paragraph. It talks about providing employment uses consistent with J1, etc. But there's a sentence at the end that says development should provide the same quantity of business and industrial floor space as the permitted schemes. It's an unusual policy.
Yeah, I think
we've talked a lot about the plan not having to reflect planning permission or planning applications. And it's,
yeah, I think this wording is put in here because during like permission they have submitted like employment evidence to justify like why they need that like intensification of employment need on the site, and that particular site on Cook's Road is also a more.
I can't hear, sorry.
That particular site in the Cook's Road site is also identified as a Lumua, like a local area in the employment land review. So we are in the view that we need that capacity in our emerging site allocation to that capacity. So that's why we put in this requirement in the plan to deliver the same quantity of the employment for space as in the permission. Does that answer the question?
Well,
but we also make clear that in the site allocation, this have to be in line with policy J1. So you have to submit like employment, like an economic strategy when you submit permission.
Yeah.
So you have to justify whether it's meet the requirement of the LUMUA, which is the employment-led development, which you have to demonstrate that your employment needs is first met on the site, like on the LUMUA boundary, and then you can fit like residential upstairs. But it doesn't matter whether the residential portion has to be lower than the employment for space portion. It's just the definition of employment-led.
Yeah, I can understand the first two sentences of that paragraph, i.e. the reference to the J1 and and then the LMUA. It's just that last sentence I'm still struggling to understand the rationale or the justification for it.
Yeah, maybe we will take it away and have a think of that.
Well, I suppose the question would be, given what J1 requires and the policy relating to local mixed-use areas, would anything be lost by removing the last sentence? I'll leave it with you to think about, because it does seem a bit of an odd prescriptive reference back to a previous permission. It's not something that it's not protecting something that exists, even, is it? It's just referring to a particular planning permission. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you. Sorry, did that pick up all the things on? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right, which brings us finally on to the last allocation, which is a smaller 1.5 hectare site. So this has got full permission on part. Yeah, and that's what's assumed within the 5 year supply.
Yeah, so it's just the 106 units within 5 years that are permission, and then the remainder of it is based for the medium term. Okay.
And the viability, BLV?
The BLV is 3.
Cleared?
Yeah, 38. Viable at 35%. Marginal viability at 40%, and I've now got the definition of marginal viability, and it's the 10%.
10%. Yeah, 10% from the BLV. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we've covered quite a lot. That was helpful. Thank you. Is there anything else anybody wishes to say or ask before we finish for today? No, okay, well, thank you for your contributions. Thank you. So we'll be back for N6, N7, well, we're not quite sure what's going to happen on N7, are we, in terms of who's going to participate? It's quite a long list of potential participants, but apparently they haven't been in touch with the programme officers. So it'll be a similar format tomorrow in terms of the sort of the structure of what we go through. The okay, thank you.
Thank you.